They say that certain truths only reveal themselves when death approaches, like secrets kept in the deepest corners of one's being. And this was no mere speculation, nor just another of the many legends circulating out there, nor a fabricated headline meant to shock. It was real, a confession uttered in a voice almost inaudible, amid tears that blurred the gaze of a man on the brink of exhaustion. Pope Francis, wrapped in a silence so heavy it seemed to suffocate even the echo of breath, spoke words capable, half shaking even the most skeptical hearts. Jesus was not merely what the books and preachers described, he was more, much more. And then the pontiff paused, as if carrying on his shoulders the weight of millennia of unrevealed mysteries, as if the truth he held was too vast for the walls of any church or the debates of any council. What compelled him to speak? What hidden knowledge did he possess, unknown to the rest of humanity? Was it fear, indifference, or simply the inability of most to see beyond the obvious? For a moment, one could imagine the sound of his voice echoing in that shadowy room, the faint clinking of the crucifix in his trembling hands, the hoarse sigh of someone finally freeing a long-guarded secret. What revelations were entrusted to him in his final days? What did he uncover in forgotten manuscripts, in ancient prayers, in the silent voices whispering between the hidden pages of time? Today, we will step through a portal sealed for centuries, locked away by fear, by power, by the convenience of many, and what lies on the other side may forever transform how you see the figure of Jesus Christ. Prepare yourself. Nothing will ever be the same. Are you ready to learn the final revelations before his death? But before we delve into this mystery, if you love Jesus and hold gratitude in your heart for the legacy of Pope Francis, for his life of faith, humility, and teachings, leave your tribute here. Thank you, Holy Father. Though he now rests in the arms of the Father, his voice continues to echo in every heart that refuses to surrender to despair or indifference. Share this message so that his call of love and compassion may reach even more souls. And if you are not yet part of this journey, join us now, because Christ still speaks through those who, like Francis, dared to love without limits to the very end. It all began in a simple room in the Vatican, far from the spotlight and grandeur many imagine. There were no cameras, no prepared speeches, no official witnesses, just an intimate conversation, laden with a weight so profound it should never have come to light. The one who heard these words was a young priest, a close confidant of the Pope. For a time he hesitated to reveal what he had witnessed, consumed by fear and responsibility. But finally, he decided to speak. Jesus wept inwardly far more than the Gospels record, the Pope confessed, his voice trembling with emotion. And it wasn't just for the cross, and it was for us. The priest stood frozen, caught between awe and deep reverence. The pontiff continued, as if he needed to unburden a truth that was suffocating him. I saw him. I don't know if it was a dream, a vision, but it felt so real it still hurts. Jesus looked at me and wept. What did it mean? A divine message? A warning? This was not just about the physical pain of crucifixion, but a far deeper spiritual anguish, a sorrow that still resonates today, silent and devastating, in those who dare to listen. That night the Pope could not sleep. In his hands he held a worn-out Bible, marked by years of prayer and seeking. And among its pages, one passage in particular haunted him like an unrelenting echo. And he began to be sorrowful and troubled, Matthew 26:37. But these were not just words written centuries ago. They were stifled cries, a pain transcending time, as if Jesus himself still sighed within the fabric of history. Pope Francis closed his eyes and relived that scene with overwhelming intensity. In that vision, Gethsemane was not just a silent garden. Christ stood alone, not only because the disciples slept, but because he carried upon his shoulders unconfessed sins, unspoken sorrows, humanity's darkest secrets. I saw his tears, murmured the pontiff, but they did not touch the ground. They were gathered by angels trembling in grief. The priest listening could barely breathe. Each word seemed seared into his soul. Francis went on, his voice breaking. God revealed to me that each of Jesus' tears had a name, and one of them was mine. What did that mean? That our stories, our falls, our deepest wounds were inscribed in that sacred weeping? And what if the truth were even more poignant? That Jesus did not just die for us, but with us, feeling in his flesh every one of our sorrows? In the days that followed, driven by a restlessness he could not explain, Francis immersed himself in the Vatican's secret archives. Among forbidden gospels, letters of martyrs, and prophecies silenced by fear, he found a fragment that would change everything. An anonymous disciple had written, "The Master warned us that times would come when his image would be distorted. They would make him a king, but forget his weeping." This was not heresy, it was a warning. Jesus did not come to be worshipped as a distant monarch, but to be known as the man of sorrows, who bore our weaknesses and wept our tears. One night, while praying in the chapel of Santa Marta, Francis fell to his knees, not from weakness, but under the weight of a revelation crushing his soul. "Lord, reveal to me what I still do not understand," he pleaded. Then a warm light filled the space. Not a spectacular apparition, but a presence transcending words, and there, before him, stood Jesus, not as the glorious king of stained glass, but as the suffering servant, his eyes brimming with a tenderness that pierced the soul. And he heard, not with his ears, but in his heart, "I did not come to be understood, I came to be accompanied." Francis wept. There, the leader of the Catholic Church had been reduced to a child before the mystery. He understood then that his mission was not to defend cold dogmas, but to point to the heart that, even when torn apart, never ceased to love. Love without measure, grace without conditions. Days later, unable to silence what burned in his chest, Francis met with two cardinals he trusted absolutely. Within the austere walls of his private quarters, he shared fragments of his most sacred and most unsettling experience. His voice, laden with an emotion rare in a pontiff, trembled as he spoke each word. One of the cardinals, pale as sacramental candle wax, interrupted, "Your Holiness, does this mean Christ still suffers?" The Pope fixed him with eyes that seemed to carry centuries of sacred pain. "Jesus is not trapped in the past. He lives in every tear shed today. He walks with every mother burying her child, with every youth lost in darkness, with every scream muffled into a pillow at night." This was not a denial of doctrine, but a revelation transcending it. Here was not only the triumphant Christ of the resurrection, but the silent companion of everyday deaths, of sorrows that make no headlines but erode souls. Those cardinals left the meeting as men who had stared directly at the sun. One of them, hands trembling, recorded in a confidential document. The Pope spoke like one who no longer fears death, but the cowardly silence in the face of a truth that cries out to be heard. That night, Francis revisited every moment of his papacy, the decisions made in tears, the mistakes confessed in the dark, the prayers that rose like smoke from anguished incense. And he understood with painful clarity, his mission was not to serve the institution, but the flesh and blood Jesus who dwells in the forgotten corners of the world. He then ordered the drafting of a letter, not an official document, but a spiritual testament, to be opened only when his heart stopped beating. In it he wrote with firm handwriting but a wounded soul, "Faith is not a museum of dogmas, but a heart that burns. Do not come to venerate me. Follow the one who weeps in hospitals and on the streets." Naturally, the Vatican, that labyrinth of gold and fear, reacted. In hushed corridor whispers, they accused him of diluting divine majesty in sentimentality. But Francis had seen too much to retreat. In a hidden chapel far from spotlights, he celebrated a mass like no other. No pomp, no audience. Just an old man, a simple chalice, and the echo of that voice still burning in his soul. "I did not come to be worshipped from afar. I came to wash your feet, dirty with dust." And in that moment, as the host dissolved on his tongue, he knew no power on earth, not even the weight of 2,000 years of tradition could silence this truth. Because the true gospel was never safe. It was and always will be a wildfire. The question echoed in the chapel like a silent thunderclap. What if Jesus returned today and we did not recognize him? Those present, cardinals, bishops, priests, felt something break inside them. Some wept without a sound. Others trembled as if an invisible wind passed through them. There was a truth in those words that could not be ignored. We have spent so long awaiting a glorious king that we forgot to see the suffering brother walking beside us. Francis no longer spoke as a distant pontiff enthroned in authority. Now his words came from the wound, from that part of the soul that bleeds for love. He knew what he planted there would only blossom after his departure, in hearts willing to listen beyond rites and dogmas. Shortly before falling ill, Francis received a protocol visit, a boy with leukemia. The meeting, scheduled for minutes, stretched to an hour. With the candor of the pure, the child asked, "Does Jesus' heart hurt like mine?" The Pope, fighting tears, leaned close and whispered, "Your heart and his beat in the same rhythm when you weep." From that day on, something in Francis changed. His homilies grew slower, laden with silences that spoke louder than words. He was not seeking applause. He wanted to awaken souls. In his final days, he handed his secretary a sealed document. In it, he described a disturbing dream. He saw Calvary happening today, in the middle of a bustling city. Christ was there, nailed to the cross, but no one looked. Everyone rushed past, absorbed in their phones, lit by screens brighter than stars. And then Jesus gazed at him and said, "They have not forgotten me out of ignorance. They have replaced me with entertainment." When these lines were read aloud in a hushed voice, the silence in the room became palpable, thick as a veil of pain. The document also revealed a personal prayer recited by Francis every morning, away from prying eyes. "Lord, if you returned today in flesh and blood, would you be recognized or crucified anew?" This was no pious devotion. It was a raw cry, a confrontation with the starkest truth. We fear the real Jesus. Francis departed this life understanding what few religious leaders dare to admit. Christ needs no palaces or powerful defenders. He needs witnesses, those who, like him, accept being wounded for love. And so in his fragility, amid sorrows and silences, the Pope became one such witness. Not through power, through the madness of a heart that insisted on loving to the end. Because in the kingdom of God, the true revolutionaries do not carry swords, they carry scars. The ink ran like tears on the paper as his trembling hands penned the final words. "Do not remember me as Pope. Remember only the man who heard him weep, because he is here, not in the clamor of spectacular miracles, but in the silence between two sighs." The document, sealed with purple wax, held a simple and devastating truth. God no longer shouts, he whispers. While theologians debated in marble halls whether this was revelation or delusion, Rome's poor already knew. In the slums where Francis washed feet stained with blood and hope, no one questioned the message's authenticity. He showed. "How's Christ in the soup kitchen line?" murmured an elderly woman whose rheumatism-stiffened fingers still held the warmth of the Pope's last embrace. There, among the forgotten, the testament was already being fulfilled. Its echoes spread through hospitals where elderly nuns read passages to the dying, prisons where inmates pass fragments like sacred contraband, poor kitchens where single mothers find strength in stolen words. "Seek him where the world does not look," the text said. In places where tears dry without a handkerchief, moans are swallowed by TV noise, loneliness smells of old medicine. Francis did not announce the end of times. He revealed the end of spiritual deafness. His secret was not in what he said, but in what he silenced. He muted dogma to hear the weeping of the streets. He turned off spotlights to see in the shadows. He relinquished the throne to sit on the floor with lepers. The kingdom does not come with fanfare, he insisted. It comes in the whisper that makes the powerful kneel in alleyways. Are you ready for this question? The question is no longer, did the Pope have a vision? But when was the last time you heard the sacred silence between your third and fourth sob? Because he is there, not as a statue, not as doctrine, but as the friend who holds your wrist when no one else notices you disappearing. Tonight before sleep, turn off your phone. Place your hand over the part of your chest that hurts the most. Wait. In that silence, beyond fear, beyond religion, beyond everything you've been taught, someone is whispering your name with the voice of one who never gave up. On you. Perhaps the greatest revelation of Francis was not a revelation at all. It was just a reminder, a forgotten echo of the gospel that was always there, buried under centuries of liturgical gold and theological debate. You do not worship my image, you accompany my cross. 6 words, 6 nails driven into the soul of organized religion. This was never about gold-plated altars, perfect processions, memorized doctrines, but about a heart that learned to bleed in the same rhythm as the carpenter of Nazareth. Francis died understanding what many armchair theologians will never grasp. Jesus is not a concept. He is the sigh between your 3rd and 4th midnight breath. Where is he? When no one is looking, seek him. In the trembling hands of the alcoholic trying to pray, in the ragged breath of the single mother at 3 a.m., in the silence of the elderly man no one visits in the nursing home. There lies the true sanctuary, not where incense rises, but where tears fall, unwitnessed. Did you feel it? That chill on your neck as you read these words, the slight tremor in your hands? It was not cheap emotion. It was him, whispering your name across the centuries, with the voice of the man who died for you and rose to keep walking by your side. What to do when the world crumbles? Stop. For 30 seconds, stop. Place your hand on your chest. Feel. Is that just a heartbeat? Listen. Beyond the noise, beyond the fear, beyond religion. Someone is calling your name, not from a high throne, from the wood where he still bleeds for love. Thank you for watching this video. Leave your like and subscribe to the Living Hope channel on YouTube. Activate notifications by clicking on the bell to receive other publications.